Welcome back. With shrinking budgets in our public schools, it seems like arts education is always the first program to go. Over the past decade, the DreamYard Project has tried to fill that void by bringing professionals from all areas of the arts world into the classrooms and lives of New York's inner city students. Joining us now from the DreamYard Project are Jason Duchin and Tanya Gallo. Thanks for being here.
Thank you for having us.
Before we talk about what you guys do, average public schools, arts and education, is it as bad as we hear it is?
Well, it's bad in the sense of today every school has a budget. They have about $58 a student to spend on art supplies. So if you factor that out, one student's art supply budget might be a couple tickets to a movie. I mean, that's the amount of money they have allotted. The thing that's nice that's beginning to happen is the Department of Ed is creating salary slots so that schools can hire art teachers, music teachers. So without question, over the last few years, there has been a noticeable turn. Things are getting better. It's not the horror story that it was, let's say, 10, 15 years ago.
But we do hear about teachers having, out of their own pocket, bringing in paints and that kind. That's still happening, right, Tanya?
Absolutely.
Yeah, I think also there's a lot of reliance on schools that have strong PTAs, because that's where, parental involvement becomes really key. So those schools who often, can have greater arts programs, often that's also because you have parents who are really dedicated to having arts in their schools. So
there's a parent group in our neighborhood that it's completely focused on funding education for the music department in the public school system to help out. Well, let's get to your project. How did it get started?
DreamYard started, my partner Tim Lord and myself, about 12 years ago, started volunteering our time at a place called Boys Harbor. And we started working with a small group, it's a community center, a small group of kids. And actually the name of the play that we started creating with them was called DreamYard. And it was a place that only kids could go, parents had forgotten, and anything was possible. And we brought it to a friend's theater, the kids performed it, and it really took off like wildfire from there.
I don't want to let that imagery go, the idea that it's a place where kids know and parents have forgotten. I mean, that concept of taking that to arts education, it seems like a great title, because that often seems like parents have forgotten the importance of that.
Yeah, and adults have. I think one of the things that's so important about education is an opportunity to unlock the doors of your imagination, to dream big. And I think what happens when everything becomes so test-centered, it becomes very much product, and you forget about the wonderment of learning. And I think the thing that's wonderful about the arts is it's an opportunity to imagine, it's an opportunity to dream, and that is really our genesis. I mean, that's where we started with kids telling each other stories.
So I want to get to the Action Project, which you're the director of, in just one second, but just in general, what is it that the DreamYard Project is all about?
Sure. DreamYard is about collaboration. We collaborate with public schools to use the arts to transform the public school learning environment. We work with about 40 schools in the Bronx, kindergarten through 12th grade, about 8,500 kids. Our focus is really the Bronx. The idea that we've set on, is that a student can work with us in elementary school, in middle school, and in high school. We actually just received a grant from the Annenberg Foundation to open up our own public high school, DreamYard Prep High School, in 2006. And everything that we're about is long-term engagement, long-term relationships. We'll work with the school for years at a time so that kids can work with our artists every week over the course of the year to develop exceptional works of art that they remember for the rest of their lives and become those touchstones for them when they think back about, to their elementary school education, think back to their middle school years, and they remember the arts and the significance they played in their development.
And how closely do you work with the curriculum that they already have? Does it enhance what they're studying already, or is it totally separate?
Yeah, that's a great question. It's not separate at all. It's deeply embedded into the curriculum. The belief that we have is that when we collaborate with a public school teacher, it's not one of those things where the artist comes in, opens up their trunk, out comes magic, and the teacher sits back in the classroom. They really collaborate together to develop projects so that at the end of our stay there, the belief and the hope is, and what we see happening is the teacher then uses those same activities they did with the artist when the artist isn't there. So it becomes part of their bag of tricks. It becomes part of the way they approach curriculum and they look at learning.
Tell us about the project you're the director of, Tanya.
Okay. It started summer 2004, and I had come on in that fall of September 2003 to start working with Jason and Tim to continue to develop the idea that we had started about 6 months prior which was the idea to create an out-of-school program for DreamYard, because most of the work they were currently doing was in the schools. And how could we build on the work that DreamYard was already doing? Originally, we thought an arts program that would be out of school, that would be up at Lehman College for the summer. And then we sort of took the idea further and thought, well, why don't we develop something that also connects deeply with the communities that the kids live in, the ideas, issues, concerns that are most important to them, so that the idea is that all the artwork they create is coming deeply from a place that draws upon the things that they care about most. And so that became, you know, sort of the philosophy of the program. And then last summer we started with our first group of 40 young people, which we had recruited from DreamYard's middle schools that they had already been working with. And now we're actually currently recruiting our next group of 40 young people. And they're in the program for 4 years.
And what do they do?
They do film and video, theater, visual art, and poetry. And last summer we had a full day from 10 to 4:30 where we all do work together as a community, and then they also go out into their discipline groups and work for 2 or 3 hours at a time, developing what we call community action projects, which are arts projects that are connected to issues in their communities. This year we did one on peer pressure, which we then brought back to their middle schools and used it as a way to sort of facilitate dialogue with other young people around the idea of peer pressure. Right now they're working on a project around media and representation. Another group is doing an oral history project. So the work is, you know, it's deep. It comes from out of research that they do. They interview their peers, their families. So they're long-term projects, but they're all arts-based and they're all connected. Working closely with teaching artists. We have about 4 artists on staff right now.
I want to know how you recruited the kids, and did you use peer pressure to get them to be a part of the program?
Positive peer pressure, positive peer pressure, which Action likes to think that it encourages positive peer pressure. Yeah, we went around to about, I think it was 8 or 10 middle schools last year, and we're probably doing a couple of more this year. Mostly in the North Bronx and the South Bronx. And I go in and we do presentations to 8th graders. We have a pretty extensive application. So we're drawing kids who there's a fair amount of motivation just to even fill out the application. Then we do interviews with them and their parents. So it's a 2-part process. So by the time, you know, we're bringing our group of 40 young people in, they've gone through an extensive process of, you know, getting accepted into the program. And then, you know, our goal is to keep them in the program for 4 years.
Yeah, and can I just jump in with one thing? I mean, one of the things, the long-term vision, I think that really makes the work that we're doing incredibly exciting and gratifying is by the time a student gets into 8th grade, they have several choices that they can make. They can make a choice to come to the Action Project, which is a way to stay with us for 4 years, regardless of where they go to high school throughout the city, to really use arts to impact not only their communities, but the vision of themselves. And then they're also going to have the opportunity to come to the DreamYard Prep High School, where they can go 7 days a week. And so I think more and more what we're trying to do is create a web throughout the Bronx so that students and their families can really make impactful choices about how they relate to the arts and how they relate to their communities.
When arts budgets are cut, it's often because the thinking is, well, it's fluff and it's not really beneficial. What are the direct benefits of a program like this to students?
There's so many. I mean, one of the things that's interesting is we actually have a fairly large grant from the U.S. Department of Education for a poetry project that we run, and we're working and tracking groups of elementary school kids and middle school kids in 4 public schools, and then we have another test group of 4 schools that we're also tracking that aren't getting poetry. All the kids that are getting the poetry, their test scores are going up, attendance is going up, their commitment to their other classes is going. I mean, everything is going up because there's an enthusiasm for being at school. 1, and 2 is everything that the arts demand. It's not one of those things where I can say, oh, you know, you look like a violinist, or, you know, why don't you come with me to Carnegie Hall and jump up on the stage there and play the violin tonight? It's something you have to work at again and again, day after day after day, to refine a craft. And I think those skill sets translate wonderfully to education, and it is the type of thing where the academic results, the attendance results, all those things we're seeing documented, and we're not the only group that has it. There's a number of groups that have that type of documentation that they could, you know, that they share with the public.
I wanted to ask you all, just on a personal basis, I know I've heard of your father, Peter Duchin, most of the time I've been here in New York. Surely, being around the arts most of your life, that must have had a similar effect on you and a love for all of this, yes? Yeah,
yes and no. I mean, it was something that until I started doing it and had teachers that were really enthusiastic about it and created enthusiasm in me, I didn't, it's not one of those things that I understood necessarily just by osmosis walking through the hallways and things like that. But it's really at school. It's running into teachers and classmates who were creating wonderful works of art and inspiring wonderful works of art, and being around my peer group that was doing things like this. I think that's what really, you know, planted that seed in me.
What do you hear from the students that are in the project that you're the director of?